What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today we're going to be taking a look at Thanos, specifically the games that got me to Infinite this season. I played this deck list the entire time. I will talk about some potential changes that I would make to this deck at the end of this video, but I wanted to showcase this season's sweetest games. Thanos is just so good with a variety of different locations. That's what this first game is going to showcase. All of these locations are great for me, and we're going to kick things off. It looks like I'm probably up against a bounce deck here. I'm going to go for the full 4 Hulks. Go for full Hulk advantage here in Gamma Lab, and I've got Reality Stone to flip Luke's Bar, which I'm thinking about doing earlier rather than later, just because I know I'm going to have to do it eventually, and by playing 4 Hulks here, I'm probably going to have priority going into the final turn regardless, but I decide to hold off for this turn. I'm just going to play with the Hulks and see what else happens here. Those 4 Hulks are going to give me a free Skaar immediately, which is a huge part of what this deck is trying to do. So I'll use that Skaar to trigger Hope Summers. Typically not how that works, but going to work out well for us here. And I am going to throw down that Reality Stone in Luke's Bar, because I'm basically out of space already. So I want to free up that location so I can start playing there next turn, and on turn 6 we'll have a little bit more time to do so. Skaar is going to come down in the throne room. I got Thanos' throne behind me as well here. Not exactly sure what I should put in this spot for the green screen, but for this video, Thanos' stone makes sense. And the big house is a pretty terrible location for me to get with Reality Stone, especially because my opponent moves in that White Widow with Grandmaster, but Vision can still move into the big house, so that's going to be fine for me. And I could play the Rock this turn, but I could also play that Rock next turn, so not going to stress about that. My opponent winds up playing Ronin, which has become a popular card recently, but I draw Mockingbird off the top of the deck, which is another fantastic card I can just throw into big house, and then I can move over Vision and I can play Thanos over in Throne Room. I can't play Thanos in the big house because my Space Stone turned into a Hulk, but Space Stone's definitely worse right now in this current iteration, but it does open up some interesting possibilities in other games for locations like the big house, and just gives you more ways to take advantage of otherwise awkward locations, and further proves the point that so many different locations are great with this deck. So because we played 2 cards, we're going to be able to shrink my opponent's Ronin just enough. We'll lose to the Dark Hawk, but we will ultimately get the victory. The first part of this video really is just all about all of the different locations that are great with Thanos, and Panopticon, I've never said that out loud before. Panopticon is great with Thanos because all of your stones get the +2 power, and now destroy locations are also reasonable with Thanos. I mean, they've always been okay, like Death's Domain has always been fine because you can move in Jeff and Vision. You've got some movement cards, and previously you had Space Stone. Now you don't. But now we can take advantage of a location like Rickety Bridge, which wasn't something that Thanos decks could previously do anything with, and now as long as we draw that Soul Stone, we will be able to win that location. My opponent winds up retreating this game. They didn't really have anything, but I just wanted to showcase what my final turn could have been. We could have played Thanos and then Soulstone, and the cards will get destroyed in that order. So Thanos won't be able to get destroyed, and then the Soulstone would still be destroyed, but we'd win that location with our Thanos. Here's a Death's Domain game as well, and this time we have the Soul Stone already, and the Thanos and my opponent gets into the domain with a Jubilee. So on turn 5, thanks to Mobius keeping Thanos at a 5-cost card, we can just play Thanos into Death's Domain. Seems pretty great. Unfortunately, I do get totally wrecked in this one because my opponent uses armor to play into Death's Domain, but that's not going to be enough. They also use a blink to trade in that armor for a Giganto. So yeah, okay, you got me. We're gonna show off some losses in this video as well. Sometimes you get unlucky, that's Marvel Snap. In this game, my opponent gets pretty unlucky. Reality Stone is going to change that center location to White Hot Room, which is actually pretty great for us because Avengers Compound is going to keep my opponent from playing their next turn, and my opponent just gave me a Widow's Kiss. So I can fill that location with Jeff, get the bonus 3 energy, still move Jeff around on the final turn, and just have a lot of options. So feeling fantastic here. I'm going to drop Vision plus Jeff and snap to this White Hot Room. But my opponent can play for White Hot Room this turn as well. They can move in Nocturne. If they have a Jeff of their own, they'll also be able to get that bonus. This will change the location, but we'll both get that bonus energy. This changes the location to Black Vortex, which gives my opponent an Ultron, locking both of us out of the game. They patched this bug, luckily, but unfortunately, even when my opponent loads back in, they are still locked out of it as those drones fill up all of their locations. I wind up getting an Orca instead of Jeff, so I'm losing in the Black Vortex, but it'll be pretty easy to win in Monster Metropolis. Believe it or not though, I don't think that's the unluckiest play that one of my opponents has made this season. And this game, my opponent has Nico Minoru on the change location mode, and they're gonna wind up using that in Bar with No Name as they drop down a Gladiator, which gives me a Sasquatch, unfortunately for them, and turns the location into Castle Zemo. So I get that Gladiator and the Sasquatch, didn't even have to pay any energy for 18 power. That's one of the most unfortunate plays I've had an opponent make this season. However, this play is also pretty unfortunate. My opponent just didn't understand this interaction and played Echo into Washington, D.C., so I'm going to intentionally play a pair of stones into that location to give them +3 power each. And because this is a TVA game, my opponent really isn't going to have much opportunity to climb back in with that location, and they're going to be forced to retreat. I also wanted to showcase the power of the updated stones in this video as well, since that's a huge part of how you play Thanos now. It's definitely a different deck than it was previously, and I think definitely a little bit worse, especially with Thanos starting in your opening hand, but Time Stone making Thanos cost 1 less is a really interesting change. And in this game, I'm gonna play Thanos to fill Fisk Tower, a little bit of a tongue twister there for me, with the idea that I can use Reality Stone to add additional power to that location later on. I thought I was just like winning by a lot in Vibranium Mines, but Cersei is gonna put my opponent ahead there by a little bit. And on this final turn, I've got 2 options. I can go Vibranium plus Vision into the mines, or I can go Reality Stone plus Vision, sending 10 more power over to that Thanos. And my opponent is just going to wind up retreating here, but it's still a really cool thing that this deck can now do. This game, I get to drop a 4-cost 20 power Thanos, which is obviously really sweet thanks to Titan here. That's going to give us a bunch of extra power on the Thanos. However, you might see a little bit of foreshadowing of what's to come with my opponent having a Nova out. They're going to flip over a Killmonger here, destroying all my stones, taking my power away from Thanos, unfortunately. But Thanos is still pretty big as a 410, giving me enough power in Titan that I think I should be able to win that location, and it's still going to make Skaar cheaper. So I'll be able to play both Skaar and Blob on this final turn. And that is a huge power point in this deck that I definitely want to speak on. Blob is just so good with Crossbones, Cull Obsidian, Vision, even Mockingbird, Sasquatch, and Skaar, that it is almost always going to win the location just by itself. My opponent has a pretty good lead here in Time Theater, but I also don't have any stones in my deck that I can hit, so Blob easily gets to a pretty large power. We can see here it took a Crossbones, a Jeff, and a Sasquatch. This game gets awkward for me because my opponent's Blue Marvel gets destroyed in Danger Room, which was actually going to help me grab a tie in Bar with No Name, but now I'm losing in Bar with No Name. I'm losing in Danger Room, but I will probably win the Black Vortex, and with Blob, I feel pretty confident about my ability to win in Danger Room, even if I have lost in the bar. So let's see what Blob can do. My opponent, probably playing Cerebro 2, is in a little bit awkward of of a position with Black Vortex. That's going to soak up any Cerebro Pump that they try to play. So they just try to win in Black Vortex, which doesn't quite get there. And unfortunately, neither does Blob. That gets destroyed in Danger Room. So we have an exact tie, which is always fun to see in a bar with no name game. But that wasn't the biggest fail I made this season with Blob. That's going to go to this game right here. Rickety Bridge, my opponent played an armor in that location, so I'm feeling safe to drop my Mobius there. However, there's a lot of weird interactions going on in this game. Great Web moves my opponent's armor, which means my Mobius and Rickety Bridge are now at risk. And I think there was just a lot going on this game. My opponent plays Luke Cage and Jotunheim's a location, but Nebula's there. So there's just like a lot of math to consider. On turn 4, I can play Psylocke, which will allow me to play Thanos on turn 5. Maybe I should have retooled that decision once I draw the Soul Stone here, because now I could potentially play the Thanos into Rickety Bridge and win that location, like I tried to do earlier on in the video. But I'm just going to play Thanos into Great Web. Filling that location will give me some flexibility in terms of what I do on the final turn. And I actually realized that because of Space Stone, I can play Thanos into Jotunheim. So that's great. But then the Space Stone moves over into the Great Web. I was kind of hoping Mobius would move into Great Web, but regardless, I draw Blob, so I can play that into Jotunheim here. And I don't notice that animation. I was just flooded with so many other things going on. I figured maybe we'll tie in Rickety Bridge if my opponent plays a card there, and then it's just going to come down to differential. So I'll play Blob, I will counteract my opponent's Nebula trigger, and I'll get a huge Blob, and that should be enough to win. But if you recognize that animation from Iron Lad, that is, of course, a Cosmo. So my Blob is going to try to activate and fail, which means I lose the game. I could have just played Blob into Great Web and won on differential, but instead, I'm defeated. One last sweet game to round out the video. I think this game probably up against a bot here, but I thought it was fun and leads me into some other things that I want to talk about, which is the future of this deck and some things coming up in Marvel Snap that I'm excited about. So you may, well, first off, we got to talk about this. District X is the third location, which just opens up a really cool playline, and that's actually the first thing I wanted to talk about. Is Arishem is coming this season, which is probably the card that I've been the most excited for in Marvel Snap in a long time. I really like District X. I've got a video about just my favorite District X games, and hopefully that video, or maybe even this game, can help change your mind. It just opens up so many interesting possibilities that you wouldn't otherwise play. Like, who uses Psylocke to cheat out a destroyer and then they can play other cards after the destroyer? Like, this just isn't an interaction that you regularly see in Marvel Snap, and I'm appreciative of District X and Arishem's ability to add these interesting moments into the game. I just think it's a lot of fun. Destroyer discounting your Skaar. Not really a play that comes up super often, but obviously really sweet that we get to make use of it here. I also brought up that I would talk about changes that I've made to the deck or could make to the deck. I haven't really played this deck too much since hitting Infinite. I wanted to hit Infinite with a Sasquatch deck since I was able to do the community spotlight video for the official Marvel Snap YouTube channel with Sasquatch, and this deck is actually pretty close to one of the decks that I featured in that video, just with Mobius instead of Shang-Chi. I think that's the only change that I made, and this deck really doesn't need Shang-Chi. You certainly could play it, but this deck often has priority. You're battling for priority with this deck, of course, with Crossbones. But I could see cutting Crossbones for Shadow King, or maybe cutting Mobius if you don't feel like it's relevant in your specific pocket meta. But against like the Thena Angela decks, I think Shadow King could be a pretty good answer. And also, I'm kind of interested in trying to slot Cersei into this list. Most of the cards that this deck plays, you're not trying to Cersei. However, Cerseiing Mobius in bad matchups, and then primarily Cerseiing Psylocke and the various stones all seem really, really sweet to me. And Oh yeah, there's still one more turn. I was going to say this game was pretty sweet to me, but we actually get to make one more play here. So I'm going to dump some random cards into Limbo, which will allow me to win that location by exactly 1 point. Doesn't matter, opponent's going to retreat. That's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.